Welcome to another episode of The Brand Culture, a podcast and video show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, and experience from hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe so you won't miss a new episode. I'm your host, Frits Bussemaker, and today I'm pleased to have a conversation with Gerrit Keferstein. Gerrit, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me, Fritz.
Gerrit, in my preparation, I have read up on your background, but I want to just begin with the audience. You are the founder and medical director of MOJO Institute. And medical director suggests, are you a trained doctor by background?
Yes, I am. Yeah.
Okay, so a trained doctor, but if I look at what MOJO Institute does, you're not your typical average doctor in a practice or in a hospital. I like the fact that you want to promote chronic health.
Yes.
And maybe you could begin with just explaining what is chronic health and what brought you on the path of trying to obtain chronic health.
Yes. Thank you, Fritz. So I grew up in Germany, and I got in touch with sport, and I fell in love with sport. I played American football. I went to the United States, developed my athletic abilities. And after I stopped playing sports, I helped other people develop their abilities, running faster, jumping higher, getting better food, better sleep. And I found that to be the most fascinating thing for me, like what can our minds and bodies achieve? So that's my first career, basically. And during that career, I had every once in a while a player who got sick, maybe from a chronic inflammatory condition of his stomachs or depression or chronic joint problems. And every once in a while, I also had family of the athletes I worked with getting sick. And I would always be confronted with some not optimal experience of these athletes or the families of the athletes when they got to their doctors. They were like unhappy with the way the treatment went, and they didn't really get as much help as they'd like. And they asked me. I was like, I'm just a personal trainer, but maybe I can help. Let's try to change your food here. Let's try to change your sleep patterns and the way you look at life and the way you look at yourself. And I found that to be pretty well working. So people got healthier, and they every once in a while they got really rid of their medications and they got rid of their disease. So I was like, well, that's interesting. I want to study medicine. And that's in my second career, I started studying medicine. And during studying medicine, I found out that we have a pathology-based medical paradigm. So it's based around how does the body get sick? And we don't talk about as much about how does the body get healthy. So we understand a lot about disease, but we don't understand a lot about health. And this trickles down into the infrastructure. A lot of the medical infrastructure we have today, we call it acute care, is very based on pathology and fixing pathology. And I consider that to be a good thing. Just to make it clear, I don't consider that to be a bad thing. But we just have to understand that this is only for acute care. When it comes to chronic care, like how can I treat my chronic diabetes condition? How can I treat my chronic autoimmune condition? We have to change our mindsets from what makes me sick, and we have to change our mindsets to what makes me healthy, and we have to get into a regenerative paradigm. So we have to switch from this acute paradigm to a regenerative paradigm, and that's what we call chronic health. And what I understood during studying medicine, that there is no infrastructure for that. So we open up the Institute for Regenerative Medicine in Cologne, close to Cologne in Germany, to develop the systems that are needed for that, to develop the contents and also the infrastructure to treat patients who want to just get healthier and want to get rid of medications. And and we can discuss more on because we have a huge problem with chronic disease.
2 or 3 questions pop into mind. First of all, definition. What is health? What does it mean to be healthy?
Yeah, I mean, to be healthy, the great thing about it is that everybody has their own way of filling that definition with their own spirit and body. Like, I think for me, being chronically healthy means to have the spirit lead you to wherever you want to be, and having all the abilities, bodily and also mental abilities, to really fulfill that role. I have from my spiritual understanding, we all have a role to fulfill, and to follow that role is what we call to follow your own mojo. And when we are able to do that spiritually, mentally, and physically, then we have full health. And when our bodies or our minds are inhibited by something, and we can't do that, we feel limited. And this is what we consider chronic disease. And in medicine, we have all types of diagnostic criteria to define all the types of illnesses. For example, like diabetes is a good example because we have a very specific definition of where diabetes starts. But that's basically an arbitrary line because we are all on a spectrum of very, very sick metabolically and very, very healthy. And at some point, we might cross this diagnostic criteria, and then we're considered, well, this guy has diabetes. But what we also always discuss is that we all have some type of diabetes, whether it's do we have very little diabetes or a lot of diabetes. And to have as little diabetes as possible makes us more and more and more healthy. Then our brains function better, our joints function better, and we just feel overall, we feel good. So health is a feeling.
That insight, by the way, I just realized that also in my own thinking, maybe in being sick or being healthy is very black and white. It's yes or no. So you either have it or you haven't. But the fact that you are on a gradient, that's an interesting insight. Is that something which you got like instantaneous, or is it something you gradually became aware, hey, that gradient is there?
Well, for me, I have the lucky situation that I came from the side of the physiology. Like many people who studied medicine, they started studying medicine when they were 18. They maybe had a father or a mother who was a doctor, and they always were like primed into this pathology mindset. I don't come from a doctor family. I come from a family who does something completely different. I went into sports, and we're looking at the physiology side. So I always looked like everything north of the diagnostic criterion. That was my field. And then when I got into medicine, I started understanding more and more everything south of the diagnostic criterion. But what I understood is that the same methods that bring us into more north of the diagnostic criteria that improve our physiology, interestingly, those same methods also bring us out of the diagnostic criterion. To be specific, like the same diets, the same nutritional habits that make an athlete a better athlete also help a diabetic to become not a diabetic anymore, and also help the depressive person to not be depressive anymore. Because at the end, we are biological organisms, and we need some resources to really function at our best. When we look at a plant in our room and we see the plant is getting like brown, we're starting to ask the questions like, what is it the plant needs to really thrive? And we have to look at the human body in the same way. And when we do that, we understand that the same things that make an athlete better are the same things that make a really sick person better. They need nutrients. They need the right types of sleep habits and circadian rhythms. They need relationships and human touch. And we can really go into the specifics on some of the latest research that we have in medicine that really shows this, how we can really treat diseases that have the idea of being like, you cannot fix them, but we can fix them. Like, for example, diseases like Alzheimer's, diabetes, bipolar disorder, chronic inflammatory diseases of the gut, even multiple sclerosis. In the last 10 years, we found out that these diseases, they are on a spectrum as well. They're not a binary switch. And when we improve the function of the biological organism human, we can get rid of those diseases.
Why isn't this concept, this holistic approach, being taught at a typical medical school?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, a great question. I think everybody who's listening should really pin this question at the top of the room and keep asking that question every single time. I can give you my answer, but this is really the question we all need to ask more and more and more and more and more. We have to teach this. Why is it not being taught? There's many layers that can answer this question. We've decided to start at the philosophical level. we have a saying. We say merci René, and what we say that because of René Descartes. René Descartes was a very important philosopher for the medical profession, because he was one of the first philosophers who considered the human being as a machine. He did it as an oversimplification, but his philosophy really got into the medicine. So the man as machine, the human as a machine. So we stopped thinking of the human body as a biological organism, and we started thinking of the human body as a machine with like joints, like joints and circulation, which are like acting like pumps. The heart is like a pump, and this mechanistic worldview really. This paradigm went into all of medicine, this mechanistic paradigm. And then we looked closer and closer and closer into the cell, but we still looked from a mechanistic perspective. We looked at molecular mechanisms. So we stopped thinking of it as organically, and we started thinking of it mechanistically. So that's one really important thing. And we have to, if we want to fix the chronic disease, we have to go back to thinking organically, biologically. We have to put the biological glasses on again. So that's the philosophy. But there's also some very specific strategy. There was something in the 1910s, 1920s called the Flexner Report. The Flexner Report was a large framework shift done mainly in the United States, where they changed all of medicine. Before the Flexner Report, everything that we've talked about was part of the medical canon. Everything we talked about was part of medicine. And then the Flexner Report came about, and under the lead of Johns Hopkins University, they decided this is medicine and this is not medicine. So they threw out like osteopathy, they threw out chiropractic, they threw out many of the biological perspectives on medicine, and they said this is not medicine and only this is medicine. So everything that Johns Hopkins University decided on with this is medicine, this became part of the medical system we have today, and everything else got thrown out. And this is a problem, because now we have this issue that we cannot treat chronic disease anymore.
It gets thrown out. Does that apply for just the Western world medicine? Because
yes,
to make a couple of assumptions right now that in other parts of the world they did not throw it out as drastically as we've done.
Yes, exactly. Like I'm primed in the Western world. I did not grow up in the Eastern world. I went to India many times. I spent many months in India. I know they have a different perspective on that. I went to Hong Kong, talked to some of those medical people, and they have a different perspective on that. I'm talking specifically about the Western world. I'm talking about the United States. I'm talking about Europe, because and also in the United States and in Europe, we have an insurance-based system, and this insurance-based system in Germany, everybody has to pay insurance. And then the state decides on what type of medicine do people get. And when they do those decisions, like what is medicine, they always go into that mechanistic route. And everything that's on an organic biological perspective, it's not considered medicine, and it's not part of it. But the problem is it's not evidence-based anymore, because the current evidence suggests clearly that most of the chronic disease, they are of origin in the bioenergetic realm. And I'm not talking about this on an esoteric level, like bioenergetics. I'm talking about very specifically science level. I'm talking about ATP, which is the biological currency of energy in the human body. The healthy human body produces 80 kilograms of this ATP molecule per day. And by that, it feeds into all the biological functions. Right? So it feeds into our brains, it feeds into our heart, and feeds into our immune system, our skin, and everything. 80 kilos per day. And if our ability to produce this ATP gets reduced, and we can talk about the reasons for that, maybe only to 60 or 50 kilos per day, then our organs are not fed enough energy on a very scientific level, and then they reduce their function. And then people might have a kidney issue, and they go to the doctor and they say, well, you got a kidney problem, here's a kidney medication. But we do not see what's really happening. And it's an energy issue, because the same person, after getting the kidney medication, 3 months later has to go to a skin doctor and gets a skin medication. 3 months later, he goes to a brain doctor and gets a brain medication. And what everybody misses is that we have a fundamental issue of the energy production in the cell. And if we improve that, all the organ functions can improve systemically. And this is evidence-based, and we really need to address that in the medical system.
You're also tracking, let's say, current fundamental beliefs of how we should treat the body. And because maybe I'm being too cynical, but one of the other reasons I was thinking of when you told me this is that you could probably earn more money curing people than keeping them healthy. So, to some extent, is that also, or is this a very tricky topic?
No, we can really discuss that. And my perspective on that is very simple. And I went into that question a lot. And obviously, we can make the mistake, I think, when we go into that question of being like really conspiratorial, etc. But what I decided on is, okay, let's really get into the mechanisms of it. And I found that we need to go into the economy of it. And the economy splits up in like two ways of doing economy. The one thing is a free market economy, and the other is a state-directed economy. In a free market economy, there will always be the methods and innovations that are really good for human beings because the people will decide on the things that really function. So if there's a doctor who can really treat people, more people will go to that doctor and give him money. He will have more budget to grow his ideas, grow his team, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. In a state-directed economy, it depends on whether the state makes good or bad decisions. I'm not arguing for either or. I'm just saying that in the state-directed economy, it's really dependent on the state making good or bad decisions. And in my opinion, well, not in my opinion, but factually, in the West, we are in a state-dependent economy. And in my opinion, on the health side, the decision-making is not very good. And I'm not very too deep into the political aspects of it. I can't go into detail on that. But I think either we need more free market economy on the health side to really regulate this, or we need to have better decision making on the state-directed side.
Hey, we're going to move on because now we have discussed a little bit the philosophy, the
Yes.
thinking, what regenerative medicine is, chronic health. I like that. So, when would I call you? When would somebody be referred to getting in touch with you? And what would the first thing you would be do when you get somebody in the office?
Yes. So most people contact us when they've been in acute care and they have everything taken care of on the acute side. So when somebody has like an acute issue, they really should go into the regular medical care. And when everything is safe and sound, they usually come to us when they've had like one or two or three acute care visits where they understood that, well, maybe long term, this is not the perfect solution for me. And that's usually when patients come to us. And in our first consultation, what we do is we look at from a biological perspective, we look at the metabolism, we look at the immune system, and we look at the nervous system. Those are the three systems that can get out of whack and they can inhibit energy production. On the nervous system end, it's the issue of chronic stress, and we help people resolve chronic stress and trauma. On the immune system end, it's chronic inflammation, and we help people resolve chronic inflammation and regulate the immune system again. And in the metabolism's front, it's chronic acidity, and we help people overcome the chronic acidity and regulate the cells. And to make it more specific, we start at looking like, does the body have everything it needs to function optimally to produce energy on all those three systems? And this starts with a micronutrient analysis, for example. And what we find is that 80% of all the people who come in with chronic issues, they have a nutrient deficiency, which when resolved makes the people feel a lot better and functions improve. And the other 20% I would consider more complicated cases where we talk about chronic trauma, which can really change the way the body functions. There's a lot of evidence on this today where we see chronic traumatization can lead to chronic inflammatory issues, which then have down trickle effects on all the human systems. So this is basically what we do.
What's your advice to everybody out there? Make certain you eat healthy and balanced, make certain you exercise, make certain you take your rest. Just take care of your body. Is that what it boils down to? And you're helping people to take care of their body.
Yeah, I mean, when people are stuck in chronic disease, we have to like really push the system over the edge. So all the like just exercise a little bit, just eat healthy. Those advice don't work when somebody is really stuck in chronic disease, because then we have to really go into specifics. We have to really go into the analysis, and then we have to use like hyperdose treatments for vitamins. We have to use more radical approaches to nutrition. For example, we did a project a couple of months ago. We finished this project in April of last year, where we had 10 people with chronic bipolar depression. And they were treatment resistant. They tried basically all the medications, all the psychotherapy. And we did a very, you would consider a harsh type of nutrition intervention, which called the ketogenic diet. It's not an easy nutritional task to do. And the patients did that for 12 weeks. And out of 10 patients, 6 of them completely resolved all their symptoms. So they could go off of all medications, and they were for the first time feeling better again. So where patients were saying, like one patient I had that brought tears to my eyes, because he said, well, all of my life, I thought I'm not going to be able to do anything in life because I'm just not, I can't rely on myself because I don't know what my psyche is going to do next day. But now I feel stable, and I'm considering to start a family. And this is really something that does not get resolved with just doing like the regular, just exercise a little bit, just do some type of nutrition, because you really have to understand what is going on in the body, and then do more specific therapeutic exercise, more specific therapeutic nutrition. And we consider all the interventions we consider them therapeutic and on the same level as pharmacological interventions. And they have to be done like rigorously and specifically. And there's evidence for that. What our goal is with the Institute is to really teach people that, how to really do that. And for the regular listeners out there, I would ask them to, yes, there is the general recommendations we have, but I would inspire them to really look at where do we come from, because 10,000 years ago, a lot of things changed for the human species, but not our genes, right? So we developed agriculture, we developed industrialization, digitization, but our genes are basically the same. And if you want to really break it down to one of the foundations is most of chronic disease comes from a tension between genes of like hunter-gatherers and the environment and habituality of modern humans. And right, so when we look at like all the things that change, this is where we can learn a lot about how can we really be healthy. What's our relationship with sunlight, with exercise, with nature, with food, et cetera, et cetera.
Also, those who are so with indigenous people, they still are so close to nature that they
Yeah, so the way I understood your question is like, let's look at the indigenous people and see what is their health, and we did that. And like one thing we have to differentiate is between like original hunter gatherers and what we today consider indigenous people. Like by definition, that today's indigenous people, they are half industrialized. For example, there's some studies out there on some Indians in South America where they looked at one tribe, which is really natural, and the other tribe who became half industrialized. They bought food at the modern markets, etc., and their health deteriorated quickly, while the hunter-gatherer tribes, they stayed healthy. There's really interesting research on Aboriginals in Australia, where Aboriginals are pretty free of diabetes. They don't have diabetes. While in Australia and Sydney, the diabetes rate skyrocketed. So what they thought is, well, maybe they have different genetics. But no, the Aboriginal people who moved to Sydney and ate Sydney food and had Sydney lifestyle habits, they became diabetes even more than the typical Australian. So they found like they are more prone to diabetes. And the interesting thing is when those Aboriginals moved back to their natural habitat, they got rid of the diabetes. And I'm not saying that we all have to become like hunter-gatherers again, but we have to understand some of the principles. And here's one principle. And I'm going to start with the study. They called the Virta study, Virta Health study. They took diabetics and they made a very specific intervention with them, mimicking the hunter-gatherer nutritional lifestyle. And it's called, again, the ketogenic diet. And what they did is they, in 9 months, 68% of the type 2 diabetics were able to get rid of all of their medications, and they did not have diabetes anymore, just with that one single nutritional intervention. And it's not about really going back. We're not going to go back. I think we have to move, we will move forward. That's not an option. And we have to move forward, and we have to have solutions that work for like 8 billion people on this planet. But we have to understand like what is our biology, and we have to mimic some of the things that are good for our biology. And this really infiltrates all of our lifestyle aspects. This infiltrates the way we relate with food, the way we have social interactions, the way we relate with exercise and sleep, etc. Circadian rhythms, for example, are a really big one. Like I talked a lot about nutrition today, but another big aspect is the circadian rhythms. For example, our relationship with light. We know that women who work as nurses with night shifts have a lot higher rate of breast cancer than people who are not working night shifts. Excuse me, I didn't understand the question.
Rhythm you talk, the circadian rhythm.
Yeah.
Give us a brief definition so we're all...
Yes, so circadian rhythm is the way our human biology relates with the outside light environment, right? So we are used for millions of years that the sun comes up at a certain day, a time of day, and the sun goes down at a certain time of the day. And when we look at a sunset, we understand the sun is not yellow anymore, but it becomes red. Why does the sun become red at night? Because the blue light frequencies get reflected back into the universe, and only the red light frequencies reach our Earth. And this is usually how we grew up millions of years, to have like at 6, 7 p.m. only red light, and then no light from like 9 p.m. That's it. But in today's environment, we have like regular lights on at home, which has a lot of the blue light frequencies. And modern research shows us that those blue light frequencies, they really are troubling for our brains. They can induce problems in our brain and nervous system, and they can even, and that's very early research, contribute to the risk of developing cancers. There was some research from Finland where they showed like blind women have almost no breast cancer. And they were like, well, that must be a coincidence. But they did more research and they found out, no, it's true. And even the more blind they are, the least risk of cancer they have. So what is happening there? And then they researched it more and they found out, well, when there is darkness, our body produces something. It's a very, very, very intense antioxidant. It's the best antioxidant of our brain and our body, and it's called melatonin. And our body only produces that when there's darkness. And the more darkness we experience, the more melatonin we produce. So what did they do? They said, well, maybe it's the melatonin. So they took melatonin and trickled in on breast cancer cells, and they found out the breast cancer cells go away under the influence of melatonin. And the melatonin breast cancer connection is pretty well established nowadays. And in medicine, we started adding melatonin to breast cancer treatment regimes in the last 3 or 4 years.
Fascinating. And we need to think of the fact that how sleep helps you get better. And it's not just the rest you're taking, but you give an example of it's a much more complex system which is contributing to our health.
Yes, exactly. And we can learn some really simple things out of that. I said, well, at sunset, the sun is red and then the sun goes down. So how can we mimic that? We can start doing in our home after the sun has set to not have on the bright light, but to turn off the bright light and only have candles. That's one thing we can do. And this is going to really help us metabolically and immunologically and neurologically. There's research out there that when you have dinner with your wife and you do it under bright light, you're going to have a lot more insulin production, so diabetes problems, than when you have the same dinner, the same food with a candlelight. And this is really something really simple we can do where we mimic the way our biology is wired. Another thing you can do is there's some glasses out there that only let out red light, right? We can use that. And from a policy perspective, I find it horrible that people disallowed regular light bulbs because they had this red touch, and now we only have the LEDs, which are really bright, a lot of blue light. This is terrible for our health.
Take for instance that say candlelight dinner is not only romantic, it's actually healthy as well.
Yes.
I like that. Now, a couple of questions, Gerrit, because I find this a fascinating topic. First of all, when in a traditional thinking, when you're in the process of curing somebody, okay, you're healthy, you can go home. We cured you. What's the condition the people coming to you have to have when you say, okay, coffee, okay, you can go home now, we're done?
Yes, yes, yes. So there is this field of preventative medicine, and what we say in regenerative medicine, we say we're not preventative medicine. We are therapeutic. So our goal is to treat disease. We have biological and physiological glasses on, but our goal is to treat disease. So people come in with conditions that have a diagnostic criterion. People come in to me with multiple sclerosis, with depression, with suicidality, with diabetes, with adipositas, overweight. They come in with diagnosis, and our goal is to get rid of the diagnosis. But the way we do it is we're not looking at the pathology and giving medication, but we're looking at, okay, how can we improve the energy production of your whole body and then get rid of the diagnosis? And the difference is usually, yes, they improve their diagnosis, but they also improve all the, like, many other things. Like there's rarely somebody who says, well, I'm less depressed only. Like mostly they say, I'm less depressed, I feel more energy, I have more fun doing exercise, I am more open socially, I have more fun enjoying like social gatherings. And if somebody has like an autoimmune condition, it's rarely, well, I have less pain in my joints. It's usually, well, my legs are less swollen, I sleep better. And that's the difference, because when we treat the biology right and we appreciate our biology, the whole system improves. So our goal is basically really to treat the disease. And when somebody has no disease anymore, I tell them, go about your life, follow your mojo, but you don't need me anymore. Stay away from doctors as far as you can, and stay away from me as far as you can. But you have some tools, and our goal is to really teach people some tools where they can really relate to their own biology better. And like our goal is to inspire them. And what we find is when they're inspired, it is a process that starts dynamic by itself. They need us less and less and less and less.
Thank you. By the way, Mojo, is that a reference to Austin Powers or something?
Yeah, in a way. What I found is, well, I was in 2017, I sold everything I own, my wife and I wanted to start fresh. I called it the white paper approach. We sold everything. We went to Bali. I lived on Bali for 1.5 years, and I was sitting just there meditating a lot and thinking about like everything I learned in medical school. I was like, so how do we go about this? So, and then this concept of mojo came to me. I was like, mojo, because I was thinking about life and I was thinking about the spark. Like, what is the spark that drives us? And this idea of mojo came to me. And I was like, well, yeah, I heard it in Austin Powers, but where did Austin Powers have it from? And I researched mojo, and I was like, well, it seems to be some type of archetype, like an archetype that goes through all the realms. Like when you look at Amazon and you Google mojo in Amazon, or you type in mojo in Amazon, you find all types of books. You say, find your business mojo, find your speaker mojo, get back your mojo as a woman. So there's so many ways where people use the concept of mojo, and I found it to be archetypical for this inner spark that drives life. And I was really pondering deeply the question, what is life? And I was thinking about, like, where did geology become biology? Like, we have this idea that 3.8 billion years ago, for some reason, under the seas, it wasn't only geology, but it became biology. And it only happened once, and it didn't happen since. So what is that spark? that spark that drives through all of biology, that drives through all of humanity, and that drives all of us. And that aspect deepened with me when I pondered on death, because I got in touch with so many people who wanted to take their life. They were like, I don't want to be here anymore. And I was working with those people, and I found that no argument, there's no cognitive argument you can give somebody who really wants to not be here anymore. But there is this spark in everybody. And for some people, this spark doesn't feel like a fire anymore. It's maybe only ashes, but it's still there. And when they give them, when those people get some more room, because with ashes you can't just you can't just blow on ashes, because then they're gone. But you can give them a little bit more room. You can give them a little bit more air and slightly put some air to it. And you have to be really, really soft with it. But then you can grow and grow and grow, and you can make it into a fire again. And that's what the whole aspect of MOJO means to us. And well, Austin Powers is one of the people who got to that archetypical aspect. And I would consider we didn't take it from Austin Powers, but Austin Powers took it from somewhere, and that's where we took it from as well.
Again, short this conversation, but I'm conscious of the time. Moment. Maybe one last topic. Um, what would your generic advice be to young people out there, people who are starting a career, who are starting to say down the path of a busy life? Any advice where how they can maybe retain and find Go Mojo?
Yeah, that's a really deep and important question, and I always keep pondering it, because it depends on what type of situation we're also in on a societal level. And I think currently my advice has a lot to do with really going into silence, because there's so much out there that the one missing aspect, like different times have different missing pieces, and the current missing piece I see with a lot of the young patients we have is this aspect of silence, like to really find out what's driving you, because most people haven't gotten in touch with their mojo. They get thrown into this world. Nobody has an instruction manual on how to live life. There is no instruction manual. And but there's always this like subtle suggestion that there are people who have this instruction manual. They say, well, have to do it like this guy because he knows how to do it. Just follow your teachers. But the truth is, nobody has the instruction manual on how to live life. There's many people that act like they know, but nobody does. Nobody knows how to live life. And I would suggest to anybody to really pull yourself out of this madness every once in a while, for a week, for 2 weeks, for 3 weeks. Go about it on your own. Go into silence, maybe on a walk into nature, and don't do anything. And you'll be surprised how many things come out of your deeper insights. In Asian medicine, they have this, they say there's two sources of truth. One source of truth they call the shiki, which are the senses. I can hear it, I can see it, I can use my senses, my outer senses to perceive truth. And the other source of truth, they say, is the ku, Ku. And the ku is the nothingness. And out of this nothingness, there comes another truth. And the shiki, they might give you knowledge, but the ku, that gives you wisdom. And really have to stay away from all the shiki, from all the outside noises, to be able to listen to the insight, to the ku. And I would really suggest, because that's high times right now where everybody's like over flooded, and to just pull yourself out, eliminate all the noise, and really listen to what's coming out of you, because there's a lot of wisdom, a lot of fire, a lot of mojo. You need to give it some room. Sorry, Fritz, I cannot hear that thing.
What you just said by being silent for a moment, because I support this. And I think this is also a great way to end this great interview affair, because I want to thank you for sharing your insight, what it means to approach health from a regenerative medicine approach, and yeah, how to become healthy and stay healthy, and aim for chronic health. Love that.
Thank you, Fritz. Thank you for having me. It was fun.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.